What's going on, guys? It's Professor Gnome, and today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming set, Prismatic Evolutions, that comes out, I believe, on the 15th of January, which is kind of right around the corner. It's about 2 to 3 weeks, so I'm really excited for the new set to come out. I just love when new cards come out. Even though this set doesn't have a ton of things that I'm extremely excited for independently, I do think there are some cards that are going to lead to some fun play and some fun decks and kind of shake up the meta a little bit. We're also getting much closer to rotation. This will be the first set, or sorry, the final set before rotation. So I think it does give us some new cards to play with and new tools to work with. But before we jump into our set breakdown, I just want to give a shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for that additional level of support. It really does go a long way and does mean a lot, so I really appreciate that. If this is content that you like to see in the future, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to let me know down in the comments and stuff like that, as well as to let me know what you want to see in the next video. I do have a series coming out soon with Control Players Unite, where we're going to be reviewing deck lists and kind of teaching some deck building skills and techniques, and kind of reviewing people's deck lists on what they should edit and work on. So if you have a list that you want to see us feature in the video, be sure to leave it in the comments down below with the hashtag office hours, so that way I can find it easier. We've been getting a ton of submissions, so I can't guarantee that your submission will be featured in this video in particular, but it is a series that we want to do going forward, so we'll definitely get to it at some point. But yeah, that's just about it for this, so we'll jump ahead into the breakdown. The one thing I do want to say before we get started is that with this list, or this kind of pack, I guess, a lot of the cards are not very good. A lot of them are pulled from starter decks, so I won't be covering all of the cards super in-depthly, just so that way this video doesn't go too long and we can save time for the cards that are kind of more important. But I say that every time I do this and it still goes long anyway, so I guess we'll see what happens. But jumping in, we have Execute and Executor, where they don't really do too much. It's just 2 energy. We heal 30 and then do 50, which is okay. We have Pinsir, again, not really that big a deal. What we do have though is Budew, where it has the Itchy Pollen attack. Budew is probably one of the biggest cards to come out of this set, where it does 10 damage, which is kind of not very important. But during your opponent's next turn, they cannot play any item cards from their hand. This is super good because being able to item lock your opponent is crazy powerful, and being able to do it without needing an energy on a card that's a completely free retreat cost is very, very good. Do I think Budew is going to break the game the way that everyone is saying? Not really. I think that if you're going first, it's kind of irrelevant. You can't really item lock your opponent anyway. It's really good going second, but it only really stops, like, it slows the game down a little bit because it stops your opponent from being able to get into, like, their Charizard EX Pidgeot combo, where, you know, they're just dropping rare candies all over the place. But there's a good amount of decks that don't need that anyway. And I think all it really does is change some decks that would want to go first into maybe going second, because Budew was really powerful into something like Miraidon, for example. But even then, it doesn't really matter all that much, because the Miraidon player could then just go first, set themselves up. You're still able to use your electric generators to get around the Budew and do something like that. I think Budew being a 30 HP target is kind of a liability, especially once your opponent, like, you have to use something to pick it up early, which can get rid of your supporter for the turn, having to use like a Penny or a Tauros to pick it up. I think it'll be good, but do I think it'll be like this extreme meta warping card? Not so much. Though one thing that's actually pretty cool with Budew is it makes our Chaladon much better, because it doesn't really need items to get going and do what it wants to do, right? As long as you're playing a stage 1 deck, so you don't need rare candy, it pulls the energy from the discard pile by itself. So if you're going first with our Caladon, you get the energy in the discard pile, your opponent Budews you, it doesn't really matter, you're like already set up, and that could make our Caladon a much better deck just because a lot of other things are going to be held down by Budew. So that could actually be pretty interesting. We'll have to just kind of wait and see how that goes. I had to sneeze for a second, so I had to mute, but hopefully that I muted on time. If not, you may hear like a weird sound as I cut around it, but whatever. Yeah, so I think Archelodon could actually get better because of Budew being in the environment, but outside of that, I don't think Budew's going to be like this overwhelming game changer. Moving on from Budew, though, we do have Leafeon and our first Eeveelution of this kind of whole set run. We have the regular Eeveelution from Twilight Masquerade, so it's the same thing we've already had. It's not really anything new, but we do have Leafeon EX, which is new and actually not that bad. It has the Fresh Leaf Storm, which does 60 damage, and then this attack does 60 damage for each energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon. So 60 times for every energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon. This could be good. I don't see it being incredible. We'll kind of have to wait and see what this kind of turns into, because a lot of decks right now don't really require a lot of energy, and this would be really good if your opponent, like, if Charizard required 3 energy, then, like, you're one-shotting Charizard, which would be good, but with just 2, you're not doing enough damage. So I think this could be fine, depending on how the meta kind of shapes up and what it turns into. But on its own right now, I don't think it's that great. There's not a lot of decks that need a lot of energy all over the board. So, like I said, I think it's okay. This could be a very good card in the future, because it does have the other attack where it does 230 damage, and then you heal 100 damage from each of your bench Pokemon. That could be nice for the future, but as of right now, I don't really think it's going to be very good. One of the biggest problems that a lot of the Eeveelutions are also kind of just bad. We get a reprint of Whimsicott. That's pretty cool. We get a reprint of Applin and Diplin. I don't know why I said reprint. So weird there. Hydrapple EX. I actually like Hydrapple EX a lot, so it's cool that we're getting a reprint of that. We're also getting a reprint of Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. I wish we get new card arts for all of these if they're going to be reprinted, but it is what it is. We get the Flareon reprint. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say right now. From 151, which is okay, but not anything extraordinary. Flareon EX is kind of cool. It does have the Burning Charge, where it does 130 damage, and then you can search your deck for up to 2 basic energies and attach them to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. This actually isn't that bad because of the fact that you can get this off on turn 1, it going second, because you can play the Eeveelution, or you can play the Eevee with the boosted evolution ability. So pretty much what you could go ahead and do is just go like Crispin, attach on turn 1, or sorry, on turn 2, go, or yeah, sorry. If you're going second on your turn 1, I don't know why that was so hard for me to explain, but if you're going second on your turn 1, what you can do is go Crispin, energy, attach from hand, boosted evolution, get into your Flareon, attack for 130, get the 2 energies from your discard, or 2 energies from your deck, attach them to whatever else it is that you want, and kind of get rolling. Hitting 130 on turn 1 can be okay, especially if you're hitting into like a small basic. I think there's potential here to be able to do something. I don't know how much I love it, but it's playable. In my opinion, it's more playable than, let's say, yeah, it's probably more playable than something like the Leafeon. The main thing too, though, is that because you have the second attack for 280, this is a little bit worse, but if you wanted to pivot, you could go like Crispin for the water and electric energy, and then evolve, use a Magma Basin, get the fire energy, and go from there. But like, that's a little bit more cumbersome. You'll probably just be trying to get the energy acceleration off the Flareon. But moving on from that, we have the Litleo and Pyroar. Both of these not very good, so, and they're just from the starter deck, so it doesn't really matter. We do see the reprint of the Hearthflame Ogerpon mask. I think this card's cool. It's sad that it never really did anything, unfortunately, because I wanted it to be better than it is, but it's just not very good, unfortunately. People tried it in Charizard, because you could, like, throw 3 energy onto it, do 140, and then you would end up doing, like, 280, but then you had to discard all the energy, and it was just better to make a new Charizard. So it wasn't really worth it. We see a Slowpoke and a Slowking. I really like this Slowpoke art. I think it's really cute, but probably will never use it. We have Forgive and Forget, where you do 70 damage. And you can put up to 2 energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand. That's actually not bad. And considering you can do this with, like, Reversal Energy, I would feel like doing this with, like, Reversal Energy or using it with the handheld fan, this could actually be really annoying. I could see this actually being, like, a fun kind of dumb control deck. Especially, like, you play this, you play it with handheld fan, and then you play, like, crushing hammers and stuff like that. That could be really annoying for your opponent to have to deal with. So I could see this being okay. Like, it'd be a very rogue bad deck, but it would be a lot of fun to play. I could definitely see me building a deck out of that Slowking. This is one of the new cards that I actually think is pretty good. We get a reprint of Goldeen, and then we also get a new Seaking, which has the Festival Lead ability. So fun to see Festival Lead getting more support. So if Festival Grounds is in play, and this Pokemon may use its attack twice, which is pretty cool. If the first attack knocks out your opponent's Pokemon, they may attack again. And what's pretty cool is for a single colorless energy, so it can be anything, probably will end up being grass energy, you get to deal 60 damage and then you draw 2 cards. This is really nice because you can do 120 damage, which isn't a lot, but it does help. But it does give you 4 cards, which is really, really powerful. Especially, too, like, just playing, like, a 1-1 line of this is really good. It does allow you to hit for weakness, not against anything super relevant, but that could change in the future. And then, you know, doing the 240 could end up mattering in some matchups, depending on, like, what we see in the future. So I definitely like the Seaking. I could see it being, like, a one-of in Festival Lead decks, just because the Goldeen's only okay. Mostly because you have to, like, coin flip for it, but just getting extra Festival Lead cards is always useful as well. We do have the Vaporeon EX. We do have the reprint from 151, which, again, is not very good. It does have the Fighting Whirlpool, where it does 90 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is a V or an EX, it does 90 more damage, but you don't really want to have to go and play the double colorless and the water energy, or... yeah, like, you don't really want to do that. So again, this card's not super ideal, but it's not, like, the worst of the Eeveelutions. Looking at the Vaporeon EX, though, it does have the Heavy Squall, where this attack does 60 damage for each of your opponent's EX Pokemon. It's okay. Just nice little splash damage, but you'd probably never really want to use that. And then the Aquamarine, it does 280 damage. And then during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. So, again, Vaporeon, probably not very good. You're probably not going to end up using it, if I'm honest. I can't really see a world where you would decide to play this. I hope I'm wrong, because Vaporeon's cool, but... yeah, I feel like this card's very, very underwhelming, and it's triple energy requirements of Fire, Water, and Electric. You could pair it with... okay, so it has the same pairing as the Flareon, right? So you could pair those together and drop, like, the 280, and if you're hitting for weakness, that'd be okay, and then, like, you pivot it out. Maybe. I guess it would just... you would probably run, like, 1 copy of this, and then just switch around depending on matchup, maybe. A new Suicune Overrun, where you do 30 damage, and then this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Not very good. Probably won't play that. Regice, also not very good. Glaceon, I wanted Glaceon to be a lot better. We just have a reprint from Twilight Masquerade, where it does 30 damage, and at the end of the turn you put 9 damage counters on the defending Pokemon if they're still in the active at the end of your opponent's next turn. It's never really going to happen or matter all that much, and even if it does, the 9 damage counters typically doesn't really mean enough to kind of equal anything out at the end of the day. We have Glaceon EX, which is a new card, and it has the Frost Bullet, where it does 110 damage. This attack also does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is playable. Like, this actually isn't bad. Having the additional 30 damage to snipe is pretty good, because again, right, think of if Budew is in the game, right? You can use this without needing your opponent to, or like you can use this without needing item cards, because you can just Crispin to it if you like really have to, right? So you can Crispin, power this up, boosted evolution, go into the active. If your opponent has the Budew just sitting on the bench for whatever reason, they switched it, that's an extra free prize card. Again, if water becomes relevant in the future, you can do the 110 damage. That would push up to 220 for if we're hitting a water Pokemon, which would be fine. It does have the secondary attack where you knock out one of your opponent's Pokemon that has exactly 6 damage counters on it. I don't think this is super relevant. It would be really good if it just said knock out all Pokemon that have exactly 6 damage counters on it, because you can make like some weird plays. Because in this case, you need to Frost Bullet twice and then use the second attack, which probably just never going to happen. But as for something that you can use is just like an early aggressive play, just to get a little bit of damage down, start sniping the bench out a little bit, I think Glaceon EX is okay. We get a reprint of the Wellspring Ogerpon EX, which is a good card, but hasn't really seen a ton of play. Like, it's okay in Lugia. It's, I think, most of the decks using it. There's the Pikachu EX. This is just from the starter decks, doesn't really do too much. We see Jolteon from 151 get a reprint. This attack it pretty much all has the same thing, the Fighting Lightning. It just does 90 damage and then 90 more if it's an EX or a V. It doesn't really matter, though this card did come up because it had a free retreat, but also it came up when Zoroark was around and you could copy stage 1 attacks. Then it wasn't all that bad. Looking at Jolteon EX, probably one of my favorite of all of these new Eeveelution EXs, because I think this card could actually see play, where it has the Flash Spear, so it does 60 damage plus, and then you discard up to 2 energy cards from any of your bench Pokemon, and the attack does 90 more damage for each energy you discarded this way. So you can actually hit decent numbers. So you're doing 180 if you discard both, and then on top of that 180 you're doing an additional 60, so you're ending up at like 240, right? Yeah, you're ending up at 240. If you attach a max belt to that, then you're doing 290. If you oh, sorry, I got a text that was confusing. But yeah, if you, my apologies for that. But yeah, so like then you attach a max belt to that, you're doing 290. You later on we saw you can attach, or not attach, but you can use like the black belt's training for an additional 40. Then you're hitting the 230 number you need to knock out Charizard. Again, you can do this off a single like Crispin to get the attack off. You just go like Crispin Electric Generator to get electric Pokemon powered up. I think that Jolteon EX actually has potential to be pretty good. The main problem that I have with it is that it does share the energy requirements for its second attack with Flareon and Vaporeon. So the electric typing is like fine. I wish that I don't know. I wish it shared it with something else though, because like you could run an Eevee with a 1 copy of Flareon, 1 copy of Vaporeon to go like and hit for weakness, but they just don't really do enough damage is where Jolteon actually could. So I wish it could be paired with a different Eeveelution or something, because the 280 drop is okay, but not incredibly relevant. It doesn't like really matter all that much. But I think that, yeah, I think Jolteon EX could actually see play. Will it be the best deck ever? Definitely not, but I think the Jolteon EX is actually playable. And it has no retreat cost, which also is really good for it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that could boost this in a better way. Like, you could probably also run, like, Gravity Mountain, and Gravity Mountain would reduce the HP of a lot of other Pokemon, making it even easier. So, like, you wouldn't even need, like, if you're up against Dracopult, you actually wouldn't even need the, Black Belt's training. You would just be able to knock that out by having Gravity Mountain Max Belt. Yeah, I feel like this is actually pretty playable. The Togedemaru is whatever, just kind of a basic coin flip. The Tapu Koko EX is one of the few EXs from the starter decks that could actually be playable, where you have the Lightning Current, which is an electric energy, and a Colorless, which is pretty easy to do. And then it does 60 damage, and then 20 more damage for each bench Pokemon. When Miraidon loses Raikou, you could end up playing this. It is a much worse Raikou, because it's not a V, so you don't get access to, like, Sealstone, even though Sealstone will also not be in the game anymore. But also you lose out on its ability, so you wouldn't be able to, get, like, the extra card off the draw. But it's also fine, because one of the problems for Miraidon is that it can be walled by the, Cornerstone Ogerpon EX, and this does give that an out. So it's a give and take. I think Tapu Koko's fine. It also is a free retreat cost Pokemon, which is always good. Even though Miraidon doesn't really need that because they do have the Latias EX. Now, I think that Tapu Koko could see a home in that deck. We get a reprint of Iron Hands, which is cool. We get a new Alolan Marowak, but unfortunately it's not all that good. We get a new Espeon, which is fun, where it has the Psychic Assault, which does 30 damage, and then 10 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. This could be playable. Probably won't be, but it could be. It also has the Psybolt, where it does 60 damage, and if you flip heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Again, this is fine. Not absolutely needed, but is okay. We get the Espeon EX. Espeon EX, this one, in my opinion, is probably the best of all the Eeveelutions that we're getting. I think the Espeon EX is actually very, very good, and this deck could actually see play very similar to Jolteon. I think this is probably your best bet if you're looking to run an Eeveelution, where you can use the Psych Out attack, where it does 160 damage, which is respectable, and then you discard a random card from your opponent's hand. This is pretty good because you can run this alongside the, what is that card called? The Xerosic, I think is how you're supposed to say it, where your opponent has to, like, pretty much draw themselves, or, like, put themselves to, like, 3 cards in hand, and then you just discard a random card out of their hand. It would be nice if you were allowed to choose, but it's fine just being able, or, like, if you hit your opponent with, like, an unfair stamp, and then you Psych Out, that could be really, really powerful. So it's definitely not bad, but also its Amethyst, its second attack for a Grass, a Psychic Energy, and a Dark Energy, is really powerful. Devolve each of your opponent's evolved Pokemon by shuffling the highest stage evolution into their, like, back into their deck. This is really good because we've already seen how powerful De-Evolution is, right? But De-Evolution is not only powerful, but one of its drawbacks is the fact that, like, if you're not going to be knocking out the thing underneath it, it's not as powerful because your opponent just replaces it back from their hand. As where with this, because it shuffles it back into the deck, again, this is really, really powerful because, like, again, you could go Unfair Stamp, you can go with the Hand Trimmers, whatever. You discard your opponent's hand, make it really annoying for them. Then you Amethyst if you're behind and, like, you need an extra turn. Let's say you pick up, like, their Charizard and the Pidgeot. Well, now if they can't get back into those, especially if they rare candied for them, it's going to be really difficult. Not only do they have to re-find a rare candy the same way they would if they went for a regular De-Evolution, but it's even more annoying because now they have to find those pieces all over again. So I think Espeon EX could actually see play, and powering it up again, like I said, is not that bad. It's a single Psychic Energy and a double Colorless Energy, which is pretty easy to do. And because you can use the boosted evolution, you can get into this pretty quickly. So I do think it's pretty powerful, as well as combining that with, and what's being reprinted here, which is the Duskull, the Dusclops, and the Dusknoir. I think that's really good because, again, using the Amethyst, you can just drop, like, a Dusclops on something, or even a Dusknoir. You go Amethyst, pick the things up, you knock this out, and you throw those cards back into the deck to have to be, like, reshuffled. which an added little side element of Amethyst, reshuffling those cards into the deck, is they become dead cards sometimes, especially if you're knocking out the basic underneath. Then let's say that they're in a situation towards the end of the game where there's 7 cards in deck and they need the 1 copy of Boss's Order that's left. You pick up 3 evolutions, it's now 10 cards in deck, making it a little bit harder for them to even find what, like, the other card they're hoping to top deck, which can be definitely very, very annoying. But yeah, I think Espeon EX is actually very good and is a deck that I will probably be playing, but we'll see kind of what happens with it as time goes on. We see just a couple other cards. We do see a new Sylveon, which has the ability Safeguard, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks of your opponent's EX Pokemon. So it's pretty good. I definitely could see this seeing some play. We also have the Sylveon EX, which we've already seen before in our most recent set, where it has the Magical Charm, which does 160 damage, and once during your opponent's next turn, the attacks used by the defending Pokemon do 100 less damage. This is okay, not anything insane or all that powerful, but I could see it getting some play, especially alongside the Eeveelution, or sorry, alongside Espeon, specifically because you could attempt to run its second ability with or second attack rather, where you choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, shuffle those Pokemon and all cards attached to the opponents into the deck. So it's pretty much the same thing, but it doesn't have to be any form of evolution. You just kind of chuck everything back, which I think is pretty good. The only main thing that stops it from kind of synergizing completely is the fact that you need, for Espeon, you need the Dark and the Grass energy, as where with Sylveon you want the Water and Electric, which I think is going to hurt their synergy and make it probably not work out, but you could just use it for the first attack as something to kind of stall with. We see Mimikyu with the Mischievous Hand. You choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on each of them. I don't really think this is very good, but you could play it if you wanted to. There's a new Delmise, an Impidimp. I think the Grimmsnarl is actually kind of cool, where this attack does 50 damage for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. We've seen this type of attack before, but I always think it's fun to try to do, especially when we have cards. What is the spider? It's not Ariados. Archeops? No. The new ninja spider thing. The EX that increases, I for the life of me can't remember what it's called, which I feel really bad about. But it like increases retreat cost. I don't know if a stage 3 or a stage 2 is the best way to do this, but I don't know. I think it's fun, and those kind of decks are always enjoyable, so I'll probably end up playing that. Got a cool random BuzzFeed article. The Alcremie EX, where it has the Sweet Gift. Once during your turn, you can heal 30 damage from one of your Pokemon. I probably would never see that getting play. I don't think it's very good. We see a new Cubone, Larvitar, Pupitar, a Riolu, which is fine, a Lucario EX, which is not very good because it's from the starter decks, a Hippowdon and a Powdon. The new Toedscruels, I think that the new Toedscruel is kind of cool, where you could play it if you were playing like a Toedscruel EX deck, where you play like Toedscruel EX, a regular Toedscruel, and then this Toedscruel, where as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, your active Pokemon and retreat cost is 2 less, so it does make it a little bit easier to pivot out your Toedscruels and stuff like that, especially because you can't play Latias because it's not a basic. So I think this could be fine. I don't know if you would play it, but it could see a home in that deck potentially. We get a reprint of Sandy Shocks. We get a new Koraidon EX. I think this Koraidon EX art is pretty cool, but could his attack actually be good? For 2 fighting and a colorless, we have the Revenge Blaster, where it does 100 damage, and if your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, this attack does 120 more, so it ends up doing 220. I think this is fine, because it's very easy to get this kind of condition down, but you're also not doing that much damage. I think it'd be kind of hard to get this energy together, too. I don't know, maybe. because you're doing 220, it's 260 if you have the Black Belt's training. I don't know, maybe something can come out of that. I kind of hope there's a better fighting energy acceleration in the future. Maybe make that work a little bit better. We have a new Paldean Clodsire EX with the Poison Ring. This does 60 damage, and then your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned and cannot retreat, which is okay. Probably not that great, but it's something. We have the Umbreon, and then we see... Alright, so this is something that I'm really saddened by. It would have been really nice if Umbreon EX did not have the electric energy and was also grass, because then you could combo the Umbreon EX, the Espeon EX, and the Leafeon EX all together into one deck and actually be able to use them like interchangeably. But the main problem with Umbreon EX is the main thing you'd want to be able to do with it is use the Onyx attack, where you discard all energy from this Pokemon and take a prize card on times where you could just pivot into it really quickly for, you know, just like something simple, right? Like you pivot into it when your opponent, you know, you have one prize card left because of weird prize trading or whatever. You just kind of pivot in Onyx, right? But you can't do that now just because of... I mean, you still could. You would run like one electric energy, and then what? You would like Glass Trumpet to the... You'd Glass Trumpet to the Eevee, right? And then you'd evolve. Yeah, I guess that could work. You still could. I guess you would run like one copy of this with Umbreon EX, but on its own, it's not very good. Yeah, I guess you would go... Alright. I hate having to run the one electric energy, but you probably could. We get the new Houndoom. Not very good. We do see a new Tyranitar EX, which I actually really like the art, and I love having a dark Tyranitar. Unfortunately, its attack just like isn't that great because it has the Tyrant Clash, where it does 150 damage, and then you discard a random energy from your opponent's hand. I don't think this is super good. Okay, it's good because it's pretty much the exact same thing as like Luxor EX, like we talked about, which is a very good card. And it's just doing a little bit more damage, and it's pretty much the same thing as the Espeon EX attack. The only problem is the fact that this takes too long to build, being a stage 3, and having to power up like the energies to it and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't really... It's just not doing enough damage as well for having to be a stage 3 with the lack of support, where... Like, Luxor EX gets away with it because you can Electric Generator to it and kind of bypass its energy requirements. But Tyranitar EX doesn't really have that. I guess you could Dark Patch. But Dark Patch is getting rotated, I think. I don't know. This could be okay. I just don't think you would want to play this over the Espeon or the Luxray. That both do the same thing, just do it a little bit better. You could go for the Grind, which does 50 for each damage count, or for each energy attached to the Pokemon, which you could power up actually pretty quickly with like some, again, like Dark Patch, or you go like Janine's Secret Arts attached to there's something that can be done with this, but it's a pretty underwhelming card. Going into the Steel types, we just get a new Zacian, which does 20 damage, and you search for a basic metal energy attached to this Pokemon. Not very good. And then it does 120 damage for 3 energy, or sorry, 110 damage for 3 energy, which again is just not really all that great. We do see our new Eevees though, where we get the Boosted Evolution reprint, where as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can evolve it during your first turn, or the turn you play it, which is very, very good. We also have the Eevee EX, which just has the Rainbow DNA ability, which is pretty much the exact same thing. Once during your turn, if you have a Pokemon EX in hand that evolves from Eevee, you may play it onto this card. If that Pokemon is to evolve it, you cannot use this ability during the first turn or the turn this card was put into play, which, like, objectively makes it worse than the Boosted Evolution. But with the Eevee, you can go Oh, wait a minute. Sparkling Crystal has to be the Tera Pokemon, right? So yeah, I guess you would have to go Eevee EX and do it that way. You wouldn't be able to go onto the regular Eevee. I don't remember if the trumpet is to only Tera or to regular normal Pokemon right now. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think you would want to play this, just because it does slow your game down a little bit. Because, like, what's the point? Once during your turn, if you have a Pokemon EX in your hand that evolves from Eevee, you may play that card onto this Pokemon to evolve it. You cannot use this ability during your first turn or the turn this Pokemon is put into play. So that's just evolving. Like, why is that good? Like, just use the boosted evolution, no? I don't know. I don't feel like Eevee is very good. If it didn't have this line, like if it was just boosted evolution but with Eevee EX, I think it'd be super solid. But I don't know. Snorlax EX, not good, but very fun. Favorite Pokemon, so happy just to see it getting new cards. Lugia EX with the Hyper Whirlpool does 140 damage. Flip a coin until you flip tails. So we get some Misty going on from Pocket. And then for each heads, discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. That's very fun, but not very good, because you probably will never actually high roll it for it to be relevant. We do get a card that actually does help Lugia, though, and that's the Regigigas, which is pretty easy for them to power up. It does have the Jewel Break, where it does 100 damage, and then if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Tera Pokemon, this attack does 120 or 130 more damage, which means it does hit that 330 number, knocking out Charizard, which does help the Lugia V-Star matchup very, very well. But one thing to note with Regigigas is it doesn't only have to be used in Lugia. It can be used in anything that really has accelerated energy. So you could splash this into Arcaludon, just drop 2 Arcaludons, get it fully powered up, and attack, which is a little bit over, a little bit overkill, but you could do it. But I think a deck that actually could utilize this is Chen Pal, because you just want to slap energies down anyway. Makes it a little bit more consistent to be able to beat things like Charizard, where you're not actually discarding as many energies to make that work, because in this case you're only discarding 4, where you'd have to typically discard like 6 in order to beat the Charizard. So just off playing this and a single superior energy retrieval, you could make that work. So I think that's fine. Shaman EX, or sorry, just regular Shaman, not an EX, is fine. Again, most of these cards are not very good. We do have a new Minccino, which is a little bit better than the other one, so I guess play that one instead for the last like month and a half of the life cycle of Lugia. We have a new Noivern EX that's actually a normal type and not a dragon, which is an interesting choice. I'm not positive why they went with that, but it does have Strafe, deal 50 damage, and you may switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. I think making this a dragon would not have really changed anything. I guess it temporarily would have given Regidrago a way to just kind of bounce around, but I don't think they would have done that anyway. So, I don't know, I think making this a dragon would have been fine. But it's cool that it's not, I guess. We get a whole bunch of other random normal Pokemon that aren't very good. I do want to get into the trainer cards, though. Amari is interesting. You draw 4 cards, and then at the end of the turn, if you have 5 or more cards in your hand, you discard your hand. This is, on paper, not very good, but I think there are decks that could take advantage of this. Things like United Wings would actually enjoy this, being able to just dump your hand and get rid of all of the extra United Wings cards in your hand could actually be useful. I think that there are a couple other niche scenarios where this could be fine, but it is definitely a risky card to use, so I probably wouldn't. But I think it's okay. The Black Belt's Patience is super, super good. I think I was calling it Black Belt's Training or whatever, but it's Black Belt's Patience. I think this card is going to be very good. It's pretty much Kieran, so you could just supplement Kieran instead of this card, but I do think the extra 10 damage will matter more than people think it does. So during this turn, attacks used by a Pokemon do 40 more damage to your opponent's active EX Pokemon. So I think that this card is going to come up very well. I like that they printed all the different arts for each generation, but I'm personally going to go ahead and say that I think that the Kanto art is probably the best. Yeah, I think the Kanto art's the best. Sinnoh's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think Kanto's the best art. But I could be biased. Oh, alright. So Glass Trumpet is getting a reprint. So let's see. So you can only use this if you have a Tera Pokemon in play. Choose up to 2 of your bench colorless Pokemon and attach it to basic energy. Okay. So you need a Tera Pokemon in play, but it does not have to attach to a Tera Pokemon. That's where I was getting confused. So you could just throw down like a Terrapagos. Or Terapagos, or however you're supposed to say it. I always forget. So you could just throw that down, right? And then just go like Eevee, Boosted Evolution, like go Glass Trumpet, bring it into the active, go Boosted Evolution, and just start attacking. Yeah, like I think that's really good. Like, okay. You probably wouldn't run the Terapagos. You probably would just run the EX Eevee. And then just evolve onto that later on in time. Yeah, okay. So you'd probably just run the Eevee so that way you can Glass Trumpet. But yeah, I think that's super, super good. Larry's skill issue. You discard your hand and then you search your deck for a Pokemon, a supporter card, and a basic energy. I think this is decent. I'm curious to see how this card's going to be used. I feel like there's definitely lines of play where it would be really good. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Max Rod, pretty cool. You can put up to 5 of any combination of Pokemon or basic energy from your discard pile into your hand. I think this is pretty good, especially as an item. I don't know if you'd want to use it as your A spec is the problem, but as an item, I think it's pretty good. We see the Ogre's Mask. I don't think that's ever going to see play. I like that they're reprinting Research, not as, like, Research, but just with the different Professor arts. I think that's really cool. I think it's really fun to have Birch back. I, as always, am a huge fan of this Professor Oak art. I think this Professor Oak art goes crazy. I also think it's really fun that we have the Professor Kukui. I think that's cool. And I like this Professor Birch art a lot. I'd probably, out of all of these, just use the Professor Oak. I'll probably get a playset of these just because I think they're really cool. We get Rescue Board and then the Treasure Gadget, where you can search your deck for up to 5 Pokemon tool cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. This is super, super redundant to do. You probably aren't really going to want this A-Spec in most decks, but there are some fun kind of troll tool drop decks that I think you could play with this. I don't believe the Garbodor is rotating, so you could... I did a deck a long time ago of like a weird tool drop deck where you have like Garbodor, and then you use that alongside of what's it called? Use that alongside like the 151 Snorlax that can grab all the different leftovers, and you just kind of keep dumping them. And I think that that could be kind of fun. But yeah, that's gonna be it, guys, for the set, and that's... Man, it's a long set. More than this is long. I always think I'm going to do these faster than I do, but I never do. But yeah, that's going to be it for the set, guys. Be sure to let me know what you think, what you're excited for, and what decks you plan on building. Be sure to let me know what decks you want to see first on the channel when this set releases. I'm very excited to play a lot of these cards, even though most of them, like I said, I don't think are very, very good. But yeah, that's just about it for the video. I will see you guys all in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, peace.